Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be talking once again about the Spider-Man No Way Home box office. As just the other day, this was happening after the video I posted, the movie surged to over $750 million worldwide. It has not even been a full week since this film's release, and it is insane that it has gotten to this number. We actually even just got their Wednesday numbers in, and it's Wednesday. Its first Wednesday has actually surpassed the first Wednesday of even Avengers Endgame when you adjust for inflation, which is completely insane. The worldwide total for this film is now $779 million, and that is purely adding in the domestic Wednesday. So something tells me this film's probably already crossed 800 million worldwide, and there is a good chance that this movie will reach $1 billion at the end, or by the end of this weekend. So by the end of the Christmas break, by the end of just Christmas itself, or even on Christmas, it could actually have crossed $1 billion, which is insane because once again, it continues to make box office records as far as the speed and the growth of the film. It's obviously pleasing a lot of fans to the point of people going back second, third, fourth times, but also it's bringing in people who have not seen a film in a good 2 years or so. So we'll break this down a little bit further and compare this to the other films like we have done already and see where it stands. Before going any further, please make sure you smash that like button, a lot of that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. I will be having a review of Matrix Resurrections at some point. However, I just hated the film so much that I just don't even want to record the review for it. But we'll probably try and get that in either as a second video today or as a video for tomorrow. I'll probably be pre-recording some videos, especially as the holidays are very much underway and family are coming in today. So if you see some videos that might have some outdated numbers in them in the future, that is the reason why. But anyway, going to the story here, of course, over on Deadline, which is typically one of the quicker places to get these numbers. As you can see, $751 million globally. This is where the film was as of yesterday, as you can see on the 22nd there. But the number has since updated. So not only is it at 750, it is now at $779 million worldwide. So this is with the updated domestic, which is now at $356 million. The domestic total for this film is going to be higher than the worldwide total of any of the Disney-run MCU films this year. And I think that that is especially important to point out because though people will continue to try and use the pandemic as an excuse as to why films failed, I think we have to be honest with ourselves, including those people who are saying that, to say, yeah, but you know what? It probably is also the fact that the films that they were putting out were not films that people really wanted to see. You can go on and try and say, well, you know, if you look at the highest ranking films this year as far as box office, you know, there's a lot of MCU titles there. Yeah, and when you compare them to other films in the MCU, they pale in comparison. And then, of course, the number one thing you say from that is, well, yeah, well, of course it's not going to be as big because it's a pandemic. And it's like, okay, then explain Spider-Man No Way Home. It's because Spider-Man No Way Home is providing fans fan service. It's giving fans something that they've been wanting to see for a long time. It's actually making a good story that is actually entertaining. And though this is film that is definitely not pleasing everyone, I know there's some people in my own community that are not fans of the film itself. I think even they are still recognizing just how powerful and how impactful some of the moments that this film features are, and why it is so many people are going out of their way and going in droves to go and see and support this film. And as I've been mentioning several times before, I think that this film also has been able to attach itself to a deeper meaning here, which is that, hey, enough is enough. We want to go out and continue to live our lives, go back to living our lives. And one of the things that was a big part of a lot of people's lives prior to the pandemic was going to see movies. And now you have millions upon millions of people across the world who have gone to a packed theater house and realized, oh, everything's okay. Everything's fine. And so my hope is that this will eventually help out those movie theaters, because obviously the movie theaters have been incredibly hard hit by all of this. I hope the studios don't get another penny of taxpayer dollars, but the theaters themselves, this has been some of the best money that they've made so far. In fact, this movie, in combination with Venom, two movies, has done more for the box office, has done more for the local cinemas, has done more for theaters than the entirety of the MCU releases this year already. And Lord knows by the end of this run, this film will be single-handedly the best provider of jobs, the best provider of cash for movie theaters across the nation and across the world as well, because this is a film, as I said, well on pace to cross $1 billion by Christmas, meaning this film's likely end result or end game will probably be closer to $1.5 billion plus. And I don't think a lot of us thought that this movie was going to make that much money, let alone the people who were using pandemic as an excuse. So comparing this film then to some of the other films, as I had mentioned, we actually see something interesting here. So for the first time in its release, other than the first Monday, so for the second time in its release, let me make sure that I have this little thing right here. So this is including adjusted for inflation numbers. For the second time, this film actually has done a better day versus even Avengers Endgame, making $27.8 million in its first Wednesday versus Endgame's $25.2. Now, obviously, these release at different times of the year, and so that helps to explain it. There's also a holiday season, but what's really incredible by all of this is that that's another $10 million more than Infinity War. So this is a movie that's well outpacing Infinity War, and that means that this film's domestic total getting to Infinity War's $675 million plus total is very likely. In fact, this film could very easily cross $700 million domestically. You add on top of that the fact that it's doing incredibly well internationally, making now well over $400 million, probably going to be well over $500, maybe $600 million by the end of the weekend. You're looking then at a movie that's not just going to cross $1 billion, but could be at 1.1 or 1.2 by the end of the weekend. And so really the sky's the limit for this movie. Not to mention when you compare this total, $356 million versus 105, 100, and 85 million. This film now has a higher domestic total than all three MCU films that were put out this year combined. And that's just from the domestic total itself. This is a movie that's going to easily surpass that of the entire worldwide totals of these films, which goes back once again to the common theme that keeps being brought up by a lot of shills for the MCU, a lot of stans who like to say, you keep saying they're box office failures, but they're not. Well, when you look at how much money it costs to produce the films, typical marketing costs, and then you remember that studios only get a percentage of the box office, and you then do some simple math, you realize, wait a minute, all the films except for Shang-Chi actually, lost money. And lost a pretty healthy amount of money. And I've been tracking this actually over on my website, OMB Reviews, and I haven't even updated this most recent number. But as you can see, just from the $751 million that was reported the other day, this is, again, well on its way to surpass the total worldwide gross of all three MCU films. And this is also going to probably end up being the biggest basically the biggest profit maker. In fact, it might already be the biggest profit maker for all of the MCU films, and they're only getting 25% of the entire box office. That is absolutely insane. It's also awesome to see that happen. Again, at 25%, this film's, actual net gain right now with 775 million or so, this net gain is going to be closer to 160, 170 million worldwide. Again, 75% of that is going to or rather, after we take into account all the different, takes and everything, 75% of that is going to go to Sony, where 25% is going to go to Disney. So you look at 34 million, which is going to be the highest gross right now. Shang-Chi has the highest return on Disney's investment this year of any of their MCU films. This movie is well on its way to maybe even already having surpassed that, and it's only getting 25%. That just shows you where the sad state, and what a sad state, the MCU currently is at this time, and it is just really not all that much of a surprise. These are all films that were either way too late in their release or created characters or tried to sell characters that no one gave a darn about. And remember, this is the future. This is phase 4. This is what they are trying to push. This is what they are trying to shove down people's throats. This is what their entire MCU series have been about as well, which, by the way, they have also really just shown the direction of the entire universe and really given us an idea of where these things are being pushed, right? That's why you hear constantly people talking about and calling this the MCU, right? I give Gary of Nerdrata credit for that because that's at least where I heard for the first time. But it is, again, something that is really panning out to be absolutely true. And what is this showing? It's showing that people aren't wanting to go see this. And the number one excuse that people were using was, well, pandemic. But this is, again, destroying the narrative, and this is a film that features a male protagonist. And that obviously has very little to do with a film being successful or not, because guess what? We look to other films in history. We look to Aliens as a great example, and people are willing to go out in droves to go see a female protagonist. The question and the real issue is whether or not it's a good story or not. And I think that this is indicating that these are not stories that people are actually wanting to go see. These are not stories that are bringing people out to the box office, and people don't care about the direction of the MCU going forward. Spider-Man, absolutely. People want to go see that. Absolutely, especially with the rumors and all the hype and all the questions that are being answered in various ways. Those are things that people actually care about. So Kevin Feige would be a lot smarter if he were to actually say, Spider-Man No Way Home, it made a crap ton of money. Maybe we should start to go in this direction. But we know they're not. We know they're not. We know they're going to double down. We know that they're going to keep on pushing their narratives. We know they're going to keep on pushing identity politics into all their films. And when their films stop making as much money as the previous films did, and if they continue to even make financial losses, the question is going to have to be raised of how long can you go with financial losses? How long can you sustain that? Because, again, you can try and use the pandemic as much as you want. Spider-Man No Way Home is breaking that narrative very easily by the fact that it's already at $779 million worldwide, even in the midst of a pandemic, even in the midst of countries shutting down. And by the way, January 5th, I believe, is the date where this is going to get a release in Japan. And Japan is notorious for loving Spider-Man as a property. So this film, making $1 billion, probably even being the highest grossing film, not just, already it's on pace. In fact, already it is now the highest grossing U.S. release film of this year, if I'm not mistaken. If we go to the 2021 worldwide charts, it actually should be at that point. Yeah, No Time to Die, or rather, Spider-Man No Way Home. Look at that. As far as actual international releases that have been released in the United States and above, 779 has already crossed No Time to Die. It's been less than a week. This movie right here, it took this movie months to get to this point. And 600 million of that, as you can see, came from the international box office. This film is getting a pretty healthy split between domestic and international, and it has barely even opened. This film is going to be massive. This film is going to destroy these China releases. It is going to be the most successful film of the year, all in the midst of a pandemic, all in the midst of fear-mongering, all in the midst of everything. And people can get saying that I'm tired of, you mentioning these things and don't get political. It's like, no, I'm just stating facts. I'm just being honest. I'm stating what the box office numbers themselves are saying and how we can read those numbers. But anyway, what are y'all's thoughts about this? Are you surprised to see this film making as much money as it is? Again, I myself did not really see this going forward. And I'm going to try and go ahead and see if I can pull up for y'all right now, some of the other metrics that I've been following along with. So this is one that I think is incredibly interesting. So just going into the actual profits and how they're broken down, $113 million has gone to Sony, whereas Disney has only gotten $37 million. So yeah, this movie has already, and this was the old number too, has already given more to Disney than the entirety of their MCU lineup this year. You can't use pandemic as an excuse anymore. How can you? How can you possibly continue to use that as your go-to? It doesn't make any sense. I'll go ahead and update these numbers on the fly for everybody. By the way, it looks like we're starting to get some new releases there. So The Kingsman with $2.3 million. That is not very good for an opening, I will say that much. And yeah, Kingsman and Matrix Resurrections are not looking like very good releases. People are going to see this movie. People are wanting to go see this movie. So yeah, this is not a turning point for the box office. This is more of a showcase of the incredible might of this specific film. But also, as I said, it's also a show of might of what Sony has been able to do this year, because if you look to Sony, again, update these numbers, $125 million in net gain, net profit going towards them. Sony so far this year has made $301 million in net gain, net profit. The MCU is still looking at negative $98 million in losses for the MCU. And this is not including what they are, what they have lost from their other Disney releases this year. Also, take a look at this as well. This is the theater's take. This is what theaters have made from Sony and then from Disney's MCU this year. In 2 films, right? And obviously the vast majority of this coming from No Way Home. In 2 films, Sony has given theaters $510 million, and this is because they typically get about 40% of the end result of the overall box office number. So these are numbers that I'll be following, whereas Disney, all 3 of their films, have given around $484 million. But as you can see, Sony has been a lot more beneficial to theaters, and so if I was Sony right now, you're in the driver's seat. Right, they're only getting $41 million right now, and by the end of it, they might be able to make up. Right, so their updated numbers, by the way, so the $98 million was the actual total loss for all 3 films. Adding in Disney's gains for them, they're now at a $56 million loss. So even if they end up making enough to make up for these losses that they've had from the MCU this year, they still have to take into account the other losses from Disney's films this year, looking especially at films like Jungle Cruise and others that have been massive financial losses. Even going back to the beginning of the pandemic, they've had massive financial losses. But with that being said, it's pretty impressive stuff going on. What are your thoughts about it? Do you think it'll reach $1 billion by Christmas? Do you think it'll reach $1.2 billion by the end of the weekend? When do you think it'll cross 1.5? And do you think, because I think it's now worth discussing, that $2 billion is probably even on the table? As I said, domestically, it's looking to be a massive juggernaut. It's going toe-to-toe with Infinity War. This is a film that's going to make well over $700 million domestically alone. It's already made $400 million internationally. So you're looking at a film, and that's, again, not even with Japan yet. You're looking at a film that's going to probably make, $800 million to maybe $1 billion internationally, let alone if they, and I hope they don't, actually get a release date for China. There's been no official release date given for China yet, but if they do, that, of course, will actually add a lot to their numbers, too. I really hope that they don't. Again, Sony's in the driver's seat for that. Really hope that they don't do that. But, again, massive, massive gains here, and just, again, completely destroying anything MCU Disney related. But let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section below. Let's like this video, smash that like button, loud that fire button on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my December Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members. Animation commentator Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dolores Ed, Dion, Father Christopher Miller, Hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyles 79, Laura, The Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson ×4, Mitch Dunaway, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody, Mondo Spieler, On to June, Orange Chat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, and Tina Bojan, and of course, the Empress of the Universe, Tina B. Thank you very much for being my Patreon members. And for my Subscribe Star members, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B., Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank you very much for supporting me on Subscribestar. And to my 4 members over on Locals.com, Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, once again, Mike Jackson, Bifford a Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. Thank you for supporting me on Locals. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, check out the top link in the video description below. It's called Willow or .w.lo, Willow link. It'll bring you to all of my social media platforms and also to all of the various other locations that you can support the channel. You can get access to things like giveaways, where I do giveaways of 4K films, 4K steelbooks, digital codes, all kinds of stuff every single month. Also, there's a level where you get access to all of that, plus an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where you also get to ask questions that we will answer on every episode of the podcast. And at the final level, you also have the ability, the Chosen of Valhalla level, you have the ability to have all of that, plus in your first month, get a free t-shirt of your choice, any color, sent anywhere in the world, and also you get to be featured once a month on the Chosen of Valhalla live stream featured on the main channel. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out the link in the description. You're all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.